The rain at the funeral felt personal. It was a cold, gray November sleet that soaked through my cheap black coat, chilling me to the bone. Everyone else stood under large black umbrellas held by chauffeurs. My sister, Veronica, stood at the front, looking like a grieving angel in her custom-made Italian silk dress. She dabbed at her dry eyes with a lace handkerchief, accepting condolences from senators, business tycoons, and my father's friends, who were already calculating how to carve up his empire. I stood at the back near the muddy edge of the grave. I was Clara. The mistake. The afterthought. The daughter who wanted to paint instead of looking at spreadsheets. My father, Richard Sterling, was a man of steel and concrete. He built skyscrapers. He didn't understand a daughter who built dreams on canvas. As the coffin was lowered, Veronica glanced back at me. Her look wasn't one of shared sorrow. It was a look of pure, unadulterated triumph. She knew what was coming. I had no idea. The lawyer's office smelled of old leather and expensive cologne. Mr. Henderson sat behind a desk that cost more than my entire college education. An education I had paid for myself by waiting tables, because Dad said art school was a waste of capital. Veronica sat in the leather armchair like a queen on a throne, sipping sparkling water. I sat on the edge of my seat, my hands trembling in my lap. I didn't want millions. I just wanted something. A token. A sign that he loved me. Maybe the old cottage by the lake where we used to fish before Mom died. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. I, Richard Sterling, being of sound mind and body. He began. The legal jargon droned on for minutes. Then came the distribution. To my eldest daughter, Veronica Sterling, Henderson read, his voice steady. I leave the Sterling Manor in the Hamptons, the penthouse in Manhattan, the entire collection of vintage Ferraris, and 90% of the voting shares in Sterling Corporation. Furthermore, I leave all liquid assets held in the primary family trust, totaling approximately $52 million. Veronica let out a breath she had been holding. She smirked, checking her nails. "Thank you, Daddy," she whispered theatrically. Mr. Henderson paused. He looked at me. His eyes softened, and for a second I saw genuine pity. I felt sick. "And to my youngest daughter, Clara?" The room went silent. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Tick, tick, tick. Who never seemed to grasp the value of a hard-earned dollar and who chose a path of fantasy over reality. I leave exactly that. $1. Mr. Henderson reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small, clear plastic bag. Inside was a single, heavy, tarnished silver coin. Specifically, Henderson continued, reading from the document, one 1922-piece silver dollar, taken from my personal desk. May she someday learn what real value is. He slid the bag across the polished mahogany desk. Stopped right in front of me. Veronica burst out laughing. It wasn't a giggle. It was a loud, cackling sound that filled the room. $1, she shrieked, wiping tears of mirth from her eyes. Oh my God, that is priceless. Literal genius. He left you lunch money, Clara. He wanted to make sure you knew exactly what you were worth to him. But single dollar. I stared at the coin. I didn't cry. The pain was too deep for tears. It felt like my father had reached out from the grave and slapped me across the face. Is that all? I whispered, my voice breaking. That is the entirety of the bequest, Henderson said softly. I am sorry, Clara. 2 hours later, I was standing on the curb outside the family estate. Veronica hadn't even let me pack properly. This is my house now, she had said, standing in the doorway with a glass of champagne. And I don't want your clutter in it. I'm redecorating. Get rid of your trash, Clara. And take your dollar with you. She slammed the heavy oak door. The lock clicked. A sound of finality. I had a suitcase full of old clothes, my sketchbook, and exactly $42 in my bank account. And, of course, the silver coin in my pocket. I walked to the bus stop in the rain. I had nowhere to go. No friends rich enough to take on a charity case and no family left. I checked into a flea-bitten motel on the outskirts of the city. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and despair. I sat on the lumpy bed and took the coin out. I wanted to throw it out the window. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I just held it. It was heavy. Heavier than a normal coin. It felt cold against my palm. Why, Dad? I whispered to the empty room. Why did you hate me so much? The next 6 months were a blur of misery. I got a job as a dishwasher at a 24-hour diner because it was the only place that would hire me without a permanent address. My hands, once used to holding paintbrushes, became red and raw from scrubbing grease off plates. I rented a basement studio apartment, if you could call it that. It was a windowless room next to the building's boiler. It was always too hot and the pipes banged all night. Meanwhile, Veronica was everywhere. She was on the cover of magazines. The new queen of real estate, they called her. I saw photos of her partying in Ibiza, shopping in Paris, crashing the Ferrari Dad loved. She was burning through the fortune like a wildfire. One night the worst thing happened. Veronica and her entourage walked into the diner where I worked. It was 2 a.m. They were drunk, loud, and hungry after a club crawl. I tried to hide in the kitchen, but the manager yelled at me to bus table 4. I walked out head down carrying a tub of dirty dishes. Wait, a shrill voice pierced the air. Is that Clara? The table went silent. Veronica stood up, swaying slightly. She looked at my stained apron, my messy hair, my worn-out shoes. Oh, my God, she laughed, pulling out her phone to record me. Look at this, everyone. The artist is scrubbing my leftovers. Dad was right. You really are pathetic. Her friends laughed. Can I get a refill, Clara? One of them sneered. Leave me alone, Veronica, I said quietly, gripping the tub. Here, she said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a crumpled $1 bill and threw it at me. It landed in the dirty dishwater. Since that's your favorite currency, Dad's favorite number for you. I ran to the back alley and cried until I couldn't breathe. That night I hit rock bottom. I had nothing. No dignity. No hope. 2 weeks later, rent was due. I was short. I hadn't eaten a proper meal in 3 days. I sat at my small wobbly table staring at the silver coin. I have to sell it, I told myself. It's silver. It has to be worth something. Maybe $20. That's enough for rice and beans. It felt like a betrayal, but survival came first. I put on my coat and walked to Sal's Pawn and Amp. Loan down the street. Sal was a grumpy old man who had seen every sad story in the city. He took the coin, barely looking at me. Peace dollar 1922, he grunted. Condition is okay. I'll give you $15 for the silver weight. 15? I asked, disappointed. Can you do 20? He sighed and put the coin on his digital scale. Let me check the weight. He watched the numbers on the screen. He frowned. He tapped the scale. He weighed it again. That's weird, Sal muttered. What? It's heavy, he said, squinting. A standard peace dollar weighs 26.73 grams. This one is 28.1 grams. And the sound. He dropped it on the glass counter. Thud. It didn't ring like silver. Sounded dull. Sal grabbed a jeweler's loupe and held it to his eye. He examined the rim of the coin closely. Well, he whispered. You didn't tell me you were a spy, kid. What are you talking about? This isn't just a coin, Sal said, looking at me with wide eyes. This is a hollow coin. Spies used them in the Cold War to transport microfilms or poisons. Look at the reading on the edge. He took a tiny razor-thin tool from his drawer. He inserted it into a microscopic groove on the side of the coin that I had never noticed. He twisted. The coin popped open like a locket. My heart stopped beating. Inside the hollowed-out center there was no poison. There was a tiny, tightly folded square of translucent film and a very small, intricate golden key with a laser-etched number on it. 714. What is that? I gasped. Sal carefully took tweezers and unfolded the film. He held it up to the light of his desk lamp. It looks like coordinates, he said. And an address. Bahnhofstrasse 45, Zurich. That's Switzerland, kid. And a code. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. Switzerland. Sal, I said, my voice shaking. How much is the flight to Zurich? A lot more than $15, he said. He looked at my desperate face. He looked at the coin. Then he did something I never expected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash. I'm going to lend you this, he said gruffly. $600. It's all I have in the register. You buy a ticket. If this is what I think it is, you come back and pay me double. If not, well, I'm an old fool. The flight was terrifying. I was hungry, tired, and scared out of my mind. I landed in Zurich with nothing but the clothes on my back, the golden key, and the microfilm. I found the address. It wasn't just a bank. It was the bank. A private, fortress-like building that screamed old money. There was no sign outside, just heavy bronze doors. I walked in. The lobby was marble and silence. A man in an impeccable suit approached me. He looked at my worn sneakers, but his expression didn't change. May I help you, mademoiselle? I have this. I said, holding out the golden key and the code from the microfilm. The man's eyes widened imperceptibly. He bowed low. Miss Sterling. We have been expecting you. Your father said you would come eventually. He did. Follow me, please. He led me through layers of security that made the airport look like a joke. Retinal scans. Voice prints. Finally, we took an elevator deep underground. We stood before a massive steel door marked 714. This key, the manager said, pointing to the golden one in my hand, is the only one in existence. The master copy was destroyed by your father's request. I inserted the key. It turned smoothly. The heavy bolts retracted with a deep, mechanical groan. The door swung open. I expected stacks of cash. Maybe gold bars. Instead, I saw a room lined with filing cabinets and a single desk. On the desk sat a large leather-bound book and a letter addressed to Clara. I walked over, my legs feeling like jelly. I opened the letter. It was Dad's handwriting. Hi, dearest Clara. If you are reading this, it means you have passed the test. You didn't just spend the dollar. You examined it. You looked for the value beneath the surface. That is something your sister never understood. I knew that if I died, Veronica would take everything. She is a shark, but she is a shark that eats until it bursts. I knew that if I left you money, she would sue you, harass you, or steal it. I had to hide your inheritance in the one place she would never look. Inside something worthless. The assets in this vault are not part of the public Sterling estate. These are the shadow assets. The private holdings I built over 40 years. In the cabinets, you will find the deeds to the land underneath the Sterling Manor. Yes, I separated the land rights from the house. You will find the controlling patents for the tech companies Veronica thinks she owns. You will find $200 million in bearer bonds. Veronica got the house. You own the ground it stands on. Veronica got the company. You own the ideas that make it run. I was hard on you, Clara, because I needed you to be tough. I needed you to survive the storm that is your sister. Now you are ready. You are the true heir. Make me proud. Love, Dad. I fell to my knees on the cold floor of the vault. I cried for an hour. Not tears of sadness, but tears of release. He hadn't hated me. He had protected me in the only way a man like him knew how. He turned me into a survivor so I could become a queen. 28:10 Part 7. The Rise. I didn't run back to New York screaming. I stayed in Zurich for 3 months. I hired the best lawyers in Europe. I learned everything about the assets. I learned that Veronica was already in trouble. She had leveraged the company to buy a yacht and a private island. The stock price was tanking. I started buying. Quietly. I used a shell company named Argentum, Latin for silver. I bought the debt on the Sterling Manor. I bought the outstanding loans of Sterling Corp. Veronica thought the banks were pressuring her. She didn't know the bank was me. I watched from afar as she unraveled. She fired the board of directors. She got sued by investors. She started selling off the Ferraris. Finally, the moment came. The annual Sterling Charity Gala. It was the social event of the season, and Veronica was desperate to use it to prove she was still on top. 32:00 Part 8. The Gala and the Fall. I flew back to New York on my own private jet. I walked into the ballroom wearing a dress made of red silk that cost more than the house I grew up in. I had diamonds around my neck, real ones from the vault. My hair was styled, my skin glowing. I wasn't the dishwasher anymore. The room went quiet when I entered. People didn't recognize me at first. Then the whispers started. Is that Clara, the outcast? She looks powerful. Veronica was holding court near the champagne fountain. She looked thin, frantic. Her smile was too wide, her eyes darting around nervously. When she saw me, she froze. She marched over, her glass shaking in her hand. Clara, she hissed. What are you doing here? How did you get in? Security. I don't think security works for you anymore, Veronica, I said calmly. My voice was steady, deep. What are you talking about? I own this building. I own this city. Actually, I said, raising my voice slightly so the nearby billionaires could hear. You don't. You defaulted on the manor's mortgage 3 months ago. The holding company, Argentum, bought the note. That's me. You're living in my house. Veronica went pale. You're lying. You have nothing. You have $1. And the company? I continued, stepping closer. You sold the voting rights to cover your gambling debts in Monaco. I bought those too. As of this morning, I am the majority shareholder of Sterling Corporation. You're fired, Veronica. The crowd gasped. Flashbulbs erupted like a thunderstorm. This is impossible. Veronica screamed, grabbing my arm. Dad left you nothing. A dirty coin. That's all you are. Worthless. I gently removed her hand from my arm. I looked at her with pity. He left me a test, I said softly. And he left you a trap. And we both got exactly what we deserved. Veronica looked around. Her friends were backing away. The waiters were looking at her with disdain. He realized it was over. The money, the power, the fame, it was all gone. Clara, she whimpered, her voice cracking. Claire, please. I'm your sister. I have nowhere to go. They're going to take the car. They're going to take everything. Help me. Give me something. Anything. Dad would have wanted you to share. I stared at her. The memory of the rain, the closed door, the dirty dishwater, and the $1 tip flashed through my mind. You're right, I said. Dad would want me to help you understand the value of money. I reached into my diamond-encrusted clutch. I pulled out a single crisp paper dollar bill. The room was dead silent. I took Veronica's trembling hand and pressed the dollar into her palm. Here, I whispered. Start where I did. Maybe in a few years, you'll learn what it's actually worth.